Good morning, everybody. If you could take your seats, we're about ready to get started here with our first panel of the day. Hello, I'm Whit Ayers. I'm the president of the American Association of Political Consultants for at least another 3 months, after which I get to turn over the baton to Dale Emmons. I'd like to welcome you to the 20th Annual Polly Awards and Conference. Our first panel is on enduring trends and issues in American politics with some of the most experienced and knowledgeable people in the entire country, willing to enlighten us and share some of their insights with us. Our sponsors are the Los Angeles Times Media Group and Tribune 365. The LA Times Media Group includes LA Times, The Envelope, Times Community News, Brand X, LA, Los Angeles Times Magazine, OI, and California Community News. They reach 44% of all adults in the Southern California marketplace, which is a whole lot of people. Tom Erspalmer is here representing the LA Times Media Group, our sponsor. Please give him a hand. Tribune 365 National Solutions Group is a national cross-platform sales team for the Tribune Company. They offer advertisers customized, innovative, multi-market solutions across all media platforms, including TV, print, digital, mobile, direct, and event marketing. John Adams is their representative, will be joining us a little bit later. But we really appreciate you sponsoring this opening panel for us. Our moderator today is Paul West. I have known Paul for years when he was the bureau chief of the Baltimore Sun. He is now the national political correspondent for the Tribune, the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, and a host of other newspapers. He has covered every national political campaign, every presidential campaign since Ronald Reagan in 1980. He's one of the most knowledgeable and insightful reporters we have on the scene today. He also is a very avid hiker and knows every trail worth knowing within 200 miles of this spot. So please welcome Paul West to the podium.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. I think we can all just come up here if you don't mind. Do we need this? Can we get rid of this? We're all mic.
I don't know where they put you. I'm supposed to go here.
It doesn't matter.
Does not matter? Okay.
Thank you, Whit. And thanks for inviting us. And we're here to discuss enduring issues and trends in American politics. I'm not sure how much relation that high-toned subject matter bears to the quality of this panel, which I've been asked to introduce. But I'm going to start with Dave Keene, because I've known him the longest. He's immediately on my left. Next to him, Mark Mellman, Roger Craver, and Ed Rollins. Dave, as you probably know, Dave is one of America's leading conservatives. Recently stepped down as chairman of the American Conservative Union. I was going to go through a long bio, but I think we'll just get directly into our topics here today, which is enduring trends.
It is a long bio.
Well,
I wrote it myself.
Yeah, right. I can see that that's not going to get us.
We always knew he could write. We weren't ever sure he could read. We just proved our point this morning.
All right. This is a Roger Craver idea, and you can read their bios in the material that you've got. Citizen activism, the role of citizen activism. Is citizen activism playing a greater or lesser role in terms of the importance in our politics? We've got the Tea Party. We've got a lot of different citizen activity this year than we used to have. Just from your perspective, what about the role of citizen activism? Is it more, less, or about the same in terms of its importance in our politics today?
You asking me?
I'm going to ask Dave because
Dave
Dave has been active with the ACU, the American Conservative Union. He was the chairman of it from 1984 until just recently. and the ringmaster of CPAC, which is has been the most successful political event of 2011. Of course, it's early.
That's very good.
2011.
I assume that we're talking about enduring values because those of us up here are old enough to know what has endured.
Yes, in fact, there are 367 years of political experience on this stage, I believe.
I was going to say when they said you had covered every race since 1980, we were about ready to retire then.
Absolutely.
But you know, citizen activism, or if you will, populism, or grassroots activity, sort of comes in cycles, and it really sort of boils up when there's a public perception of a real problem. You had the activism on the left during the Vietnam era. You had really the beginning of the transformation of the Republican Party with the activist wave in the 1960s and the Goldwater campaign, and then Reagan in 1976 and 80. And now you have the Tea Parties and all that, which are, again, focused around a perceived problem, which is the fiscal problems facing the country. When there isn't a perceived problem, you don't have quite as much activity, but it is, you see it today in a different way. It's really transformed what's transformed all of politics, and the ability both of citizens to be active and to have impact is technology. Roger, in the early days, and when computers came in and you were finally able, you on the left and Richard Viguerie on the right, to actually identify people that were interested in specific issues, that changed politics, and that change has gone on to today. When Howard Dean ran for president, Joe Trippi made his name famously because he once raised $600,000 in a day on the internet. Ron Paul, who was even less credible in many ways than Howard Dean, never sent out an email that didn't raise at least $600,000 and raised $6 million in one day on the internet because of citizen activism. When they'd raised a lot of money from big givers, but at the end of this last cycle, when President Obama finally attacked Karl Rove and Ed Gillespie and these fellows with Crossroads, they raised another $10 or $12 million over the internet in a very short period of time. That money is what we'd call citizen activist money. It's because of the internet that you've got thousands of people that turn out and do things that you just couldn't communicate that way in a previous decade. So the question of whether there's more involvement in terms of people's minds may be different from whether there's more involvement in actuality, because people can get together and communicate more effectively with each other around existing institutions than they could 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Okay, now, Mark Mellman is the pollster on the panel.
And the youngster.
Yes, I was going to point that out, but I thought it would be obvious to the audience.
Mark,
I wanted to make sure it was obvious.
okay, Mark's a Democrat, but in terms of, since we're talking about this activism, the Tea Party, I wanted to ask you, is the Tea Party a movement or a mood?
Well, that's a very good question. And obviously, I'm not intimately familiar with the Tea Party, but I'll tell you, it seems to be both, which is to say there clearly is a movement. There clearly are groups of people who come together and engage in action of various kinds together, some of it more directed, some of it less directed, but people really are doing things, and that seems to me to suggest a movement. But it is also a mood in the sense that there is not, I think, a total coherence to the ideology of the Tea Party. It's not a movement in that strict sense. And certainly, there's a lot of a concern in the public and the electorate about things like government spending, things like the deficit, which has been the sort of mantra of the Tea Party. So there is a mood that is conducive to organizations and movements like the Tea Party forming, but there clearly is a movement there that is organized to some meaningful extent. I just add on one thing to what David said, which is, and I think there's no question we see in some ways increased citizen activism, but I think in other ways we are seeing decreases in citizen activism, and I think it is interesting to note. People think they are less involved in politics than they used to be. That is, when you ask people questions in surveys about their level of activity, their level of engagement, their level of knowledge, their level of involvement in various kinds of political activities, they're telling us that they're less involved than they were in the past. So on the one hand, there is this coterie of people who do get activated around certain things. The Obama campaign certainly activated millions of people as volunteers on the internet, as givers. The truth is the McCain campaign did as well. Lots of campaigns have in recent times. We did Harry Reid's campaign. Sharon Engel obviously activated a whole lot of people, raised $14 million in a quarter. So clearly a lot of activism of that kind. Yet on a lot of issues of the kind that Roger and I and others deal with, there's frankly less activism and much more difficult to get people engaged in some of those issues sometimes than it has been in the past.
Okay, Roger. Roger Craver, the third person to my left, who came up with this idea for this particular question, is I want to say, one of the real giants of the political consulting craft, about to become a member of the Hall of Fame here. And I will give a little introduction about Roger. He's a lawyer by training. He basically helped invent, if he didn't, the direct mail business in politics in 1975. He's out of partisan politics now, but back in 1980, which was a pivotal year for a lot of us, his firm did Teddy Kennedy's campaign. And prior to that, he had done Mo Udall's campaign in 1976, which I guess was the campaign that proved that money, a brilliant candidate, and a talented political consultant can get outdone if the other guy is rewriting the campaign playbook and is a better match for the times. Roger, you came up with this question, so obviously you've got some ideas on whether citizen activism is playing a greater or lesser role and or importance in our politics today. I'm interested in your thoughts.
The point David made about the cyclical nature of citizen involvement, the big movements both on the right and the left and the extreme middle with groups like Common Cause occurred in the late 60s, early 70s around the paralysis that was in Washington. Sound familiar? The Vietnam War, sound familiar? And just a general frustration on the part of the people that everybody was organized except the people, and that was true on the right and the left. I mean, Viguerie ran the Republican Party to build those movements. I ran the Democratic Party to start groups like NOW and other things. Now, that has not been repeated in the generation. What is happening is there's a lot of citizen activism, some of it through organized, centralized groups. Others go under the radar so that the technology enables people to quickly get involved on an issue, but then they move off. So there's a very fleeting nature to movements, and I suspect, Mark, that's why you don't always pick it up. The other thing, it takes an awful lot of anger in America to get big movements started, and what we're seeing in Libya or Egypt or things. I mean, that is the ultimate outrage, and you can see the power of that technology for citizen revolution, actually. So I suspect we're yet to see what's coming. I think people are just beginning to warm up and get pissed off.
Ed Rollins, a former partner of yours, the late David Sawyer, once said, quote, "I don't manipulate voters because I can't. They're too sophisticated. I'm much more interested in the nature of communication itself. How do you create a dialogue with the electorate? How do you control the dynamic of the campaign, set the agenda for discussion, answer an opponent's charges? Those are my issues. You have to get way inside a campaign before you can resolve them, too." Ed is another future Hall of Famer in this organization. White House political director under Ronald Reagan, the man who brought Haley Barbour to Washington and taught him everything he knows. Jack Kemp in '88, Ross Perot in '92, Mike Huckabee in 2008. He's had leading roles in all of these and done a lot of other things. He's a commentator for CNN now. Ed, we've got this proliferation of media, cable, blogs, social networks. Have they increased and intensified or decreased and diffused the role of citizen activism?